Welcome everyone to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. Today is a very special day here in Israel. It is Yom Yerushalayim. Today is the day that we commemorate the tremendous victories of the Six-Day War in 1967, of which was the reunification of Jerusalem into the modern state of Israel. If you're in Israel today, you absolutely must travel up to Jerusalem. If you are not in Israel right now, make sure to put it in your calendar for next year to be in Israel, in Jerusalem on Yom Yerushalayim. It's such a powerful day. You walk the streets of Jerusalem, the vibe you get when you walk the streets and you walk all the way to the old city of Jerusalem. You go to the Kotel, you see all of the dancing. It is just phenomenal. So I sat down with General Avivi today, spoke to him about the Yom Yerushalayim, how he sees this war in 2025 in comparison to 1967, in comparison to the war of 1948, how he views the relevance of the debate over the status of Judea and Samaria, so to speak, now that we are amidst a very different mindset here in Israel after October 7th. So all that and more. And of course, we spoke about the war in Gaza, the accomplishments of the IDF, the conquering of up to now 75% very soon of Gaza, and what he anticipates to see with Iran, all that and more. Here's what we spoke about. It's a great pleasure to be joined today by the founder and chairman of IDSF, Brigadier General Amir Avivi. General, thank you so much for joining today.
My pleasure, Moshe.
As always, there is a lot going on in this war. What can you share with us?
Well, in Gaza, there are 5 divisions now operating in a pretty much full-scale attack inside Gaza. We already see the pressure amounting in Hamas and starting to talk about a hostage deal. The IDF has encountered some logistical challenges opening the humanitarian zone. They're working on that. It's delayed a few days, but eventually the humanitarian zones will be opened in the areas controlled by the IDF, and the humanitarian aid will be distributed by American companies, detaching the Gazan society from Hamas. The Gazans are moving south. The IDF is encouraging them to move towards the areas where the humanitarian aid will be distributed. And our forces are systematically conquering Gaza, attacking fiercely, making sure it's done in a way that secures our soldiers, a lot of Air Force, artillery, different capabilities that are being used to really minimize casualties, and it seems that the IDF is managing to do it very, very well. Hamas hasn't been able to pay salaries in the last few months, so it's a big question talking about the willingness of Hamas fighters to continue fighting without getting paid, and also at a certain point without aid. And so all of these things are going to impact, and the IDF is constantly degrading also the leadership of Hamas. Very few leaders from the regional leadership of Hamas are left in Gaza, and they are targeted constantly. So the army is talking about something like 2 months controlling 75% of the Gaza Strip. Why aren't they talking about the remaining 25%? It's the areas where Hamas is holding hostages, and they are going to be dealt more carefully. But obviously, if you conquer 75% of Gaza, basically we bring Hamas to a reality of collapse, including moving the Gazans and detaching Hamas from the Gazans. So big things are happening. And we see a lot of resolution from the army and the government. And while this is happening, you see a whole campaign in some of Israel's media and some of the politicians, mostly in the opposition, really trying to demoralize, to discourage, to say we cannot win, that the reservists are tired and it's pointless and we need to stop the war. And this is what we in IDSF are fighting fiercely every day on national TV, on radio, in newspapers, on social media. We've seen, unfortunately, also very high-ranking generals and former prime ministers accusing falsely Israel for conducting atrocities, for enjoying to kill the babies, terrible things that we attacked obviously very strongly. I think that politics is really driving some people completely crazy, even to the point where they are willing to undermine their own country in the efforts of war in order to push some narrative against the government, but it's actually undermining the army. So it's a fierce fight on the public sphere against these false narratives and these attempts to discourage our soldiers and the society and the government from winning decisively this war.
General, does the army have any recourse against military figures who say outlandish things? Is there a way to strip them of their rank or to end their capability to serve in the reserves?
So the Minister of Defense already took a decision regarding Yair Golan, that he is not going to be invited anymore to any reserve. He's not allowed to put uniform. He's not allowed to go into military bases. Other generals that signed at the time a letter calling for insubordination were also fired from the army. We didn't reach the point yet where legally you can strip them of their ranks. But we might get to this point later on if they'll change the law. But definitely, I think the fact that they are getting more and more extreme, and they're losing completely the support of the society. And at the end of the day, maybe a small radical group would, support what they're saying, mainly just for one reason, a pure hate to this right-wing government. But other than that, I think that the vast majority of the society is not willing to accept such a reality. And I think that we're really in an historical moment with a journey that started 5 years ago with IDSF being created, that we see a change of leadership among the generals of Israel. From a long time, the public sphere was dominated by generals that from year to year were losing their really professional stance and really focusing only on politics and getting more and more extreme. And we are bringing the voice of reason, the voice of Zionism, of Judaism, of the love of the country and the people, of strength, and really building a country that can defend itself by itself, the importance of victory. And I think that the vast majority of the Israeli society definitely wants to side with officers, commanders, generals that love the country, that love the people, that are full of spirit and values and strengths, and not people who just deal with politics and accuse the country and our soldiers of war crimes. So I think that really we're in an historical moment of a huge change, and we see really this group losing completely its importance within the Israeli society.
You tell your story, and I assume many of, if not all of our viewers, have heard your beautiful story about bringing your 600 soldiers to Jerusalem and really instilling them with the spirit of fighting and understanding what they are fighting for. These generals, these former leaders of Israel, who are just speaking out against the army and against the Jewish right to be in Israel. Do you think that they're having an impact on the fighters in the army right now? Are these soldiers looking at these people, looking up to them and saying, wow, if they served and that's what they think, what am I fighting for? Or do you think they're obsolete and they're speaking to a bygone generation and the current fighters in the army are not losing morale as a result?
I think that the young generation and the reservists really are completely detached from this kind of thinking. They're Zionists, they're strong, and they want to win this war. The young generation is very, very different from the old generation that has been educated in Oslo times, and really adopting false narratives that distance from core Jewish Zionist values. So these generals maybe have some traction within some of the old society on the left, but Haaretz, which is a very left-wing newspaper, they published a huge article this week saying that 83%, something like that, of the Israelis want to see all the Gazans relocated. 83% of the Jews in Israel want to see the Gazans relocated, and this is Haaretz numbers. So I think that it shows where really the hearts and minds of the Israeli people are. They want a decisive win. They understand that this is an existential war. They are not willing to live side by side with a society that wants to kill them. And I think there is a huge change in Israel talking about an understanding of reality. And I think we'll see in the coming years also how it's going to impact on the political level. But definitely there is a huge change. There is an awakening in the Israeli society, a better understanding that this is not only an existential war, it's a religious war. It's a religious war. It's not about just about land or two-state solution or something like that. They really want to eradicate us completely. Nobody on the other side is talking about two states. They're talking about destroying us completely. And I think that most of the society understands this reality.
General, I want to ask you a bit of a philosophical question, so bear with me for a moment. This week we are commemorating the victories of the Six-Day War. And when you look at 1948 versus 1967, in 1948, obviously there was tremendous success, but the country was a little bit divided, with different groups having different approaches to how to achieve independence. Whereas in 1967, the government, it was before my time, but the government was much more united. And perhaps as a result, the victory was overwhelming in 1967. I'm curious if you can try to draw a comparison to 2025. Are we in a 1948 moment or a 1967 moment?
So I think that around 1967, when you looked at the left-wing parties and right-wing parties, that most of the society talking about Zionism, talking about our values, talking about the understanding of reality and what we're dealing with, and also within the army, there was a lot of spirit and an understanding that we have to win decisively and we need to liberate our country and we need Judah and Samaria and the Golan Heights and so on. The army was pushing all the time to attack and liberate more and more areas. And there wasn't a big difference between right and left, certainly not talking about national security. There were differences maybe economically. The left was more socialist, the right was more capitalist. It was about economy. It wasn't about a difference in basic values of Zionism, Judaism, or even national security ideas. And when we won decisively in the Six-Day War, everybody was really, really happy. The whole country, religious, non-religious, and so on. We're celebrating, this week, Jerusalem's Day. Every year in the last few years, I participated in the parade with the flags in Jerusalem. We're talking, as you were saying, Moshe, about the big victory of the Six-Day War, reuniting our capital. This is not about left or right. This is about Jerusalem, our eternal city, more than 3,000 years. And what always shocked me when I came to these parades is that like 98% of the people participating in the parade in Jerusalem are Zionist religious. And you also say, what's going on here? Where are all the other people, You don't need to have a kippah or put tefillin or keep Shabbat to really connect to Jerusalem, to our capital, to our history, to the big victory of the Six-Day War, reuniting our capital and so on. But something really wrong is going on in the way Israelis who are not Zionist religious are being educated, are being disconnected from their heritage, from their history, from really the connection of our story. And this is impacting. But I think that the young generation is different. It's very, very different. This young generation is much more Zionist. It's much more patriotic, much more resolute, understand things on the ground. They haven't been educated by one channel on TV, or they live in a very open world with social media. They get much more information from many different sources. The media in Israel is also very different, and you have many different voices, not like before. So their upbringing is completely different, and the young generation is very different from the old generation. Yesterday, by the way, I met a guy who had an interesting idea. He said, we, the old generation, really are that they should decide that we cannot vote anymore. From 15 onwards, abolish vote. Give the young generation the right to vote. That's it. So yes, of course, he said it in a humoristic way, but really a sense that there is a generation that is lost. But even this generation, looking at the 7th of October, has experienced a huge awakening. And it's also changing. And some people, won't change, but it's not the vast majority. The vast majority of Israelis, I think, have experienced a very, very big change and a much better understanding of our challenges and a much better connection to our core values.
So expanding beyond Jerusalem, when you look at Judea and Samaria, of course, within IDSF, we spend a lot of time bringing people to Judea and Samaria, focusing on the strategic necessity of that entire region, which of course was expanded as well in 1967. Do you think right now in Israeli society, it's still a question mark post October 7th about the necessity for Judea and Samaria, or has there also been a shift in understanding that, of course, you can't have a Palestinian state in that area?
I think that the vast majority of the Israeli society have a clear understanding there is no scenario where there will be a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria. I think that the support for applying sovereignty in most of the area, certainly Area C, which is under full Israeli control, this idea has been embraced by most of the society. I can tell you I met many leaders who lead the towns and cities along what we call the Green Line, and they are petrified. They think, and rightly so, that they are in danger similar to the 7th of October. And they understand the connection between having a massive presence of Jews on the mountains to diminishing the threat for cities like Kfar Saba, Ra'anana, and all the regional municipalities along Road 6. So definitely there is a big change, and I expect the government in the time frame of Trump's presidency to apply sovereignty. We need to get this over with. Yesterday I lectured in the Jordan Valley. We arrived there a lot. It's crucial for Israel, from not only from a security point of view, also for our sense of rightness and connection. I mean, all our history is on these mountains. The reason why we came back is in Judea and Samaria, and we definitely need to make sure that after this war, after winning decisively against Gaza and Iran, after applying maybe regional peace agreements, we have to focus mainly on applying sovereignty in most of Judean Samaria, and also anyway be responsible for the whole area of the land of Israel, security-wise, and manage this area, defining some kind of self-governance to Arabs who live in these areas.
General, I appreciate you taking all my questions. Our viewers have submitted an overwhelming amount of questions. And if I can kind of really highlight two main areas of curiosity. One is in terms of the underground infrastructure in Gaza that has been destroyed. Meaning, you mentioned we're close to reaching 75% of Gaza being conquered. But what does that tell us about what's happening in the metro underground in Gaza? Are we also 75% of the way there?
So the army said it would take us 2 months to reach 75%, but the way the army is operating, the army is conquering areas. Every area that is conquered, all the infrastructure is completely destroyed systematically. And this takes time. We take over an area and then we really search systematically for all the underground infrastructure, all the houses that are booby-trapped and full of munition and terrorists and so on, and we completely destroy the whole infrastructure systematically. This is going to take time. This is why the army is proceeding steadily, but not too fast, because you want to make sure that as you move forward, you don't find yourself in a situation where you have terrorists behind you that emerge from tunnels. So this needs to be very systematic. And throughout the war, a lot of new technologies, capabilities, tactics have been developed. In this last year, Israel did a technological leap so big that it can give Israel an advantage for the next 40, 50 years towards their enemies, things that are beyond imagination. Basically, Israeli really out of the box thinking, bended the laws of physics and chemistry, and amazing things are done, which we, of course, we cannot go into details. But it's not the same Israel of the 7th of October. One of the clear things that are happening is that Israel every day is getting stronger and stronger exponentially, and our enemies are getting weaker and weaker. And we always thought, that the long war is a huge disadvantage for Israel. And of course, nobody likes long wars. But this is not what we're experiencing in this war. We see as things are moving forward that really Israel is gaining a more and more advantage. And one thing we have a really difficult time to bridge, and this is manpower. The fact that you can open new industries, new lines of production, new technologies. You cannot create more human beings during the war, and obviously that's the biggest challenge. With our reservists that have been fighting for a long time, and this is why we want to shorten the war. The fact that we're not managing to recruit massively the ultra-Orthodox other people is bad, and we need to change that. We need really the society to serve. We have built a new division. We are bringing back people who are young and haven't been in reserve, who have been discharged and now are being called back. But it's not enough. And this is one thing that is more difficult to bridge. But overall, I think that many exciting and important things are happening.
And what can you share with us about a strike on Iran?
So Israel is in full readiness to do that. We understand that this is an historical opportunity. The proxies of Iran have been mostly destroyed. Syria, Hezbollah, Hamas, they don't pose any threat anymore, certainly not massive. Yemen that occasionally shoots a missile, but really it's not a massive threat. Iran that has been deprived from their air defense and many other capabilities, and this is the moment to deal with this. Now, Israel prefers to conduct an attack with the US, so we're waiting to see the outcome of the talks between the US and Iran. I personally, I don't believe there is any scenario where Iran will be willing to dismantle all their nuclear sites and get rid of all the enrichment capability. And therefore, I believe that eventually these talks are going nowhere, and the US will join with us to deal with them. If President Trump manages to get the Iranians to the point where they really actually are willing to dismantle all the sites, that will be amazing. Israel is all in favor of that, but we're very skeptical as a country that Iranians will really do that. They're stalling. They might promise things. They're not going to do that. And in the time frame of the coming months, or maximum a year, Israel, one way or another, will deal with this. I mean, one thing is sure: we're not going to enable Iran to have a bomb and to continue to enrich uranium.
Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Thank you for your leadership throughout this war. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.